Is it going now? Well, this is annoying and problematic. So I just did this whole video. I don't know when the streaming stopped. Um, so that's fun and annoying. I guess I'm gonna do it all again. And then we're gonna just kind of end it when it's over. So this video right here is going to be a demonstration. Again, I did the whole thing already and realized for some reason it wasn't streaming, about sprites and sprite groups. So again, because there was some kind of technical difficulty, I don't know, we can see that it's streaming right here. Sorry about that. I guess I'm going to start over. So basically, first of all, you'll notice if you watch several of these videos in a row that I am not at the same place as normal. So I'm visiting some family over the holidays. So I'm in the spare room over there with kind of a minimal setup. But we're just going to kind of work with it, fix any issues as we go along. So I'm going to minimize this. What I want to talk about today is just making groups of sprites and ways we can interact with them. So first off, I'm going to comment out some of the things I did later and uncomment some stuff right here. So what I have here is just a for loop that is making 20 sprites on the screen. I don't want this either. So we're making 20 sprites randomly placed on the screen, and they're getting a random color right there. Feel free to pause the video and look at this as we go along. So I have all this right here. Again, we're making a randomly placed sprite, but you'll notice that when we do that, they overlap a lot. You may want that for your specific use. You may not. It depends on your specific context. But one thing that is very useful when you have several sprites, and particularly several sprites with similar behaviors, we can add these into a group. And a way I like to think about it is, let's look at this sprite up here, this kind of orange one. I could talk to this specific sprite, on its own, and I could say, hey, Billy, we'll pretend this has the name Billy. I want you to, start spinning around. Or, if this word classroom, I could say, okay, Billy, I want you to pass out this assignment to the rest of the class, stuff like that. Or again, using the classroom metaphor, I could say, hey, everyone in the class, I want you to open up your textbook to page 75, and we'll start today's lesson. So you can talk to individual sprites or every sprite in the group. It's a very useful tool. So to do that, we have to go through a few steps. And again, I've already typed this up, so I'm not going to type it live, but I'm going to go through everything here. So I have this sprite group variable that I've made, but I haven't set it up as anything yet. Here in setup, I'm saying sprite group. Again, I'm assigning it to be a new group. Group is technically a class in the p5.play library. So again, you have to set up as a new instance of the group class, and you need a capital G in group. That's just the standard convention for classes. Once you've done that, you can go in, and I've got right here this line where we talk to the group, and we're going to add a sprite to the group. In this case, it's the my sprites that we're making a new instance of every time the for loop runs. So now we can, to talk to every sprite in this group, we can just say, sprite group, go do something. The some things we can do, I've got a link in the description here to this page specifically, but under the reference for group, you can find, here's all the things you can do to a group. Relatively speaking, it's not a ton, but it's very flexible. You'll notice several of these have a callback function, and I'm going to talk about callbacks in a future video, so don't worry about that if you're not unsure. Again, a callback is a very useful thing. It's essentially a function that you can call whenever these methods get triggered. So you can set up really custom interactions. It's very useful. Just so you know. So one thing that's useful, though, to use is the displace function, or method, I should say. And I've got that right here, sprite group.displace. In this case, whenever sprites are overlapping, we can check that. And if they are, we're going to displace them so they are no longer overlapping. We're essentially going to shift the sprites to the closest non-overlapping point. So we may get sprites like we have this kind of magenta, maroon-ish one right here by my mouse, and this blue one where they're right up next to each other, but they aren't technically overlapping. So if I run this again now, you'll notice that, again, we get several sprites right up next to each other as we go along with this, but none of them are overlapping like they were before. So again, that could be useful depending on your instance, but we're talking to the whole group and we're saying to displace everything within that group. So we can talk to the group at once, or we can talk to sprites specifically, on an individual level. So I'm going to comment out this for loop. I'm going to uncomment this other stuff and kind of go through a breakdown of what we've got right here. So first off, I'm making just a single sprite and I'm giving it a random movement speed. So if we run this again, you notice that one sprite moves off in a random direction at a speed of 3 pixels per frame. And then I'm making 5 other sprites. And what I'm doing is I'm just giving them a random position. They're these long boxes right here. I'm adding them to a group called long boxes. You can see I made that group up here. You have to make the group before you can add stuff in it. Otherwise, the computer gets angry. And then I'm setting the immovable property for that sprite to true. So again, the sprites won't move. And you'll notice, boom, right there, the moving sprite bounces off of them. The reason that's happening is because down here in my draw function, I'm specifically telling that individual sprite to bounce off of anything in the long boxes group. So that's just how we go. So we're saying, my player character sprite is going to bounce off of the walls. Boing. We do run into a little bit of a bug though, because I set, the displace right here, just like we did with the sprite group. But because we're setting immovable to true, before we can do the displacement check, even though we're checking it, the immovable property doesn't let the sprites move, so we can't shift them. So you can run into some potential bugs with that. But again, that's basically it. Everything I went through in the first section. It's pretty short, pretty straightforward, but the short version of it is, again, you can make whatever sprites you need, you can put them into a group and you can talk to either the sprites individually or the whole group and tell them to behave in a specific way. It's very useful, but it gets even more useful when we start adding the callback functions, which is going to be a separate video that I'm going to go through in the next day or two. So look out for that. I hope it was pretty useful. Again, I'm making sure that my stream is still going because I don't want to do this video a third time. But that's going to wrap it up. So I have a link to this code that I just made and kind of went through in the description, as well as the reference materials and things like that that could be useful for you. So you can check all of those out on your own. If you learned something, feel free to give that video a little like, maybe a subscribe if you find several of these useful. Again, it helps out everything, YouTube stuff. I'm not going to go too much into that because I've already gone on for 9 minutes and 24 seconds according to this software. But that's pretty much it. So stay tuned for some more videos. We're going to get more and more in depth. Again, we'll play with some callback functions and start adding animations to our sprites. So that's going to wrap it up for me today. So everyone have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you